Hello everybody, my name is Armondo, and today my topic is something that we've all heard of, something it's a myth, something it's a legend, something it's an actual epidemic that's going on currently, and my topic is climate change, and it is an epidemic that we are facing today. So my major claim that I will present to you guys is why climate change is a worldwide issue that is anthropogenic, also known as AGW. Anthropogenic meaning that it's man-made or caused by man. So our proposition is that by limiting the amount of fossil fuels we burn on a global scale can minimize the effect that we put on the ozone, our ozone. It's not just, we use those and it's what we rely on. My supporting claims that I will be talking about in my presentation is 1, power plants have no limit to carbon pollution. 2nd, power plants and industrial facilities are the main contributors to carbon pollution. And lastly, carbon dioxide from the 1750s, the Industrial Revolution up until now. So power plants have no limit to carbon pollution, which means they can pump day and night continuously. And this causes a problem for us because of the amount of carbon pollution they produce. Power plants are responsible for about 40% of industrial carbon pollution in the United States alone. It's about close to half. Burning of fossil fuels from large companies and factories are damaging ozone, which is meant to keep certain radiation out, kind of also meant to preserve our coolness within the Earth. By damaging this, we are increasing the temperature as well as increasing the water levels caused by the melting of the ice caps. And this, we've kind of seen in the past 2 years or so. With the increase of water levels, we've seen major superstorms which have plowed through the Caribbean islands. This is all due to high pressure, pressure change in the water, helping these storms grow larger and larger. So there's no doubt that we might see some in the future. Power plants and industrial facilities are the main contributor of carbon pollution. U.S. Senator Robert Mendez made a comment in 2011. Plants and facilities in New Jersey alone emitted more than 25 million metric tons of carbon pollution. That's in New Jersey alone. This is a state on the East Coast. Compared to us in California, that's about a third of the size that we are. Just to put in comparison, in a full year, the amount of 25 metric tons is the equivalent of the pollution of over 5.4 million cars that we have on the roadways. In California, we have about 22 million registered vehicles, so that's probably about a quarter of what we drive here. And this is a dozen of facilities that's producing the amount of pollution. And also, lastly, carbon dioxide from the 1750s, Industrial Revolution, up until now. In the 1700s, when CO2 was majorly being introduced into the atmosphere, the ppm count, parts per million, was estimated to be around 280 parts per million. And you gotta put into the fact that this is thousands of years into the Industrial Revolution, when we actually started building skyscrapers, large infrastructures, bridges and stuff, when we actually started burning fossil fuels in order to create these products. It's estimated that in 2014, which is a little bit past 150 years, we're at 168 now to be exact, we managed to increase the ppm count to roughly 398 ppm. That's 118 ppm counts that we've increased in a matter of 150 plus years that they've managed to do in over a couple thousand years. It's estimated that by the year 2050, due to the CO2 emissions increase, we are expected to be around 450 ppm, parts per million. Again, we're still on the increase. We managed to get to 280 again, a couple thousand years, and we have surpassed that. By the year of 2100, we are expected to be at around 520 ppm, parts per million. So it's generally on the increase, and this is all man-made. So in conclusion, these are all issues that are anthropogenic. These are all caused by us as a community, as populations. We, with the use of multiple aerosol sprays, our desire of fashion, as you had mentioned, the factories that are growing, companies that are growing, all these are on the increase which is contributing to climate change. Thank you.
All right, Armando, I think you're approaching the beginning of the speech a little tentatively, hesitant to make a claim. You phrase it as a question, why is it happening? When you get to the proposition, I'm going, okay, well, it is sort of phrased like a claim until we get to the end when it's a little awkward. It's like, well, I'm not sure what the impact is. It starts off like a cause-effect claim, but at the end, we're off on a tangential issue. You've got a qualifier and a dependent clause there as part of the proposition that is not really as distinct as it needs to be. So as I'm listening to this, I'm going, well, okay, so is this about carbon dioxide and global warming? Is this about ozone and the decline in the ozone layer? Is this about how carbon dioxide is and the decrease is going to change weather events? It's not as clear as it needs to be, despite the fact that there is a structure at the beginning of the speech that you set up. The secondary issues, the same thing. They need to be phrased like declarative statements, and they often just sound like, well, here's a piece of information that I'm going to talk about, without telling me what the point of talking about it is. And your point should be pretty straightforward. Anthropogenic global warming is a result of human activity, clearly, and it's affecting the ozone layer in a negative way. Now, let me show you first that the ozone layer is affected by the amount of carbon dioxide that's produced at these factories. Second, that the carbon dioxide is produced primarily in these factories and they are unregulated. And finally, that if we change that, we would have a decline in the amount of atmospheric carbon dioxide, or we would have continuing safe amounts of ozone, or something like that. Let's make them declarative sentences. I'm still unclear about the relationship between the CO2 and the ozone issue. That needs to be explained a little bit more. You kind of go off on a tangent at the end when you're talking about aerosol sprays, and I'm going, well, that was an issue back in the 70s when people were talking about ozone layer depletion. How that's connected to what's going on here is not clear at all. It just feels like it's completely disconnected, and so, like I said, it feels tangential. The citation of evidence is also problematic. I don't hear sources as consistently as I need to. I heard some statistical information about the parts per million that we've had since 1700 and how it's gone up, and I'm going, okay, so where did this information come from? There's not really a citation on that. You make a claim that superstorms and surges have occurred as a result of changes in water pressure that apparently are linked somehow to either ozone depletion or to CO2 in the atmosphere, but I don't get an explanation of that. I have no source or authority that's giving us that link. You just treat it as a given. I did get a source citation from our New Jersey senator telling us about the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere in New Jersey that is produced by the factories there. That's a pretty narrow piece of information, though, like you pointed out, that's just one place, one state in the country. It shouldn't be hard to find, that there are people suggesting that the power plant production of carbon dioxide is substantial. When you say it's unregulated, I didn't get any information that tells me that it's unregulated. The EPA has been given authority over this for a number of years. I don't know what kinds of rules they put into place. I know that we don't have a carbon trading system, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people are indifferent to the amount of carbon that's going on. And by the way, California, we do have a carbon trading system, so it is regulated here to some degree. And you make no mention of that. When you start talking about comparisons between New Jersey and California, I'm going, okay, well, when are we going to get to that part of the argument? And it never shows up. So it's like you've got bits and pieces of information on the subject that you're putting together, but they're not coming together as clearly as they need to advance an argument. And your argument is so ambiguous at the beginning. I mean, I know it's an environmental argument. I know that you're making an argument that says that we are screwing things up. I don't know that there's much dispute that we do things that affect the atmosphere negatively. The question is, what could we do to change it? And that's the thing I was kind of looking for. Well, where's the proof that regulating this would change it and stop any bad things from happening? It sounds to me like it's a done deal that we're going to get to 450 parts per million by 2050 and 520 by 2100. I'm going, and is there anything we can do to prevent that from happening? And I don't see anything that tells me that. And that's the argument that you're making, and so I was expecting something more on that. All right, thank you.